I'm thinking about starting to watch these movies. Has anybody ever seen these Star Wars things? Has anybody? I like them. Happy Star Wars Day to you. It's not my birthday. just feels like it. It's amazing. Man, I want to just start off today. It's our last NVC at the movies and just kind of get right to my point if I could. Can I do that? Yeah. Point of the message today is this, that sometimes our faith in, for those of you who are following Jesus in your life, and your faith can be, our faith, my faith, can be very external, kind of the things that people see that we do on the outside. We go to church, maybe we read our Bibles, whatever. But if we're going to win in life, if we're going to kind of conquer the empire or the enemy, come on somebody, right? We got to get on the inside. We got to go deeper with our faith and let Jesus not just change the outside of us, but like the inside of us, because that's where our problems really lie, is on the inside of our lives, in our heart and our soul. And so I believe that Jesus has some great help for us there. And so we're going to dive into it. Let me talk to you a little bit about Star Wars. And I also want to just give a shout out to my people over in Venue 2. Venue 2, I got to sneak over during the time, and I love those guys. They're a high energy bunch over there. And I want them to know that twice Venue 2 did win the raffle, because I think they feel a little jisted because Venue 1 has won the raffle so many times. But the force is strong with you, Venue 2. All right. I want to talk to you a little bit about Star Wars. I grew up as a Star Wars kid when I was 7 years old. My cousin from California flew up to visit family, and he says, Matt, I was 7 years old. He goes, have you seen Star Wars? I said, no, I haven't even heard of it. And he goes, it's amazing. You got to go with me. And he took me to the movie theater. We walked in a little late, but we saw the spot where Darth Vader lands on the ship, walking through the corridor, and the guns are pew, 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 you know, and the stormtroopers, and I was like, oh, and my world was changed like all of yours will be. And I brought in some of my paraphernalia because I own some things, and I thought I would share a few things today. So did anybody see my video that me and Nolan made with our little BB-8? This is, I own this guy. Somebody gave that to me. It was a great gift. Got mugs. I got a lot of Star Wars mugs. I have one you pour hot coffee in, the lightsabers turn on with the heat. It's pretty awesome. I actually have a second edition, I believe, true Empire Strikes Back script. You are not allowed to touch this. Seriously. People have given me chopsticks that light up as lightsabers. And I have a Chewbacca mask that I was given to by my daughter-in-law before Chewbacca went to the dentist. But it's fun to wear once in a while and scare our dog, who is also named Kenobi. So, like, there's a little bit of Star Wars in our world, and our kids loved it growing up. And it's an interesting phenomenon because it really shaped our culture. It kind of became, in some ways, the mythology of America to a large degree. And Star Wars was such a radically different and revolutionary film in 1977. But what really changed things was in 1980 when the next movie came out, that is The Empire Strikes Back. That was radical because up until that point, the idea of sequel didn't really exist in our culture, but sequels started to become a thing. And what was great about this movie is it was so much better. If you ask fans across the internet, they will tell you that this is at the very highest ranking of all the Star Wars films, and it is one of my very favorite films as well, The Empire Strikes Back. And it had a couple surprises. Number one, at the end of the movie, you're left hanging, so you're aware, my goodness, I hope they make another one to tell us the end of the story, and that was kind of new. And they also revealed some secrets to develop the story that we didn't know were coming. Now, you got to think back with me. We know now what's happened in the Star Wars universe, right? But remember when we didn't know, and if you're old enough to have seen this in the theater, there was a few key surprises that included this. Number one, when Yoda says there was another Jedi, and we had no idea who that was. Remember how awesome that was? Some of the true fans in here are just like giddy on the inside. I can feel it. The second surprise was that Luke could be Darth Vader's son, and we were all aghast, like, no! And just society and churches began to pray, like, God, please don't. And the third and most disturbing fact was that Luke kissed his sister, but we will skip that. Go ahead to another thing. I'm going to just show you one scene from the movie, then we're going to dive into some things that the Bible teaches that I think apply to our lives. which is good. And in this scene, in this movie, one of the things that struck me that I wanted to share with you today is this scene where Luke is in training to become a Jedi with little Master Yoda, the green guy. And he's on this planet that seems to be uninhabited. And so he's free to kind of develop the force within him. But in the middle of that, he's going through some inner turmoil. Luke is struggling with his own temptations, his bent towards hatred and the dark side. And at one point, he is aware of an entrance to a cave that in the mythology of Star Wars is called the evil cave of Dagobah. And Luke goes, what is down there? And Yoda says, there's a strong pull to the dark side in there. And Luke says, I'm going to go check it out. And he goes, what is in there? And Yoda says very wisely, because Yoda only says wise things, he says, only what you take with you. And it's true that Luke is going to go down and face what he believes to be the greatest enemy in his life, but he doesn't see it coming. And I want you to remember this scene as we watch this. It was this epic foreshadowing moment where Luke first begins to see, oh my goodness, maybe there's a connection between me and Darth Vader. And here's what I want to posit to you as just a means of illustration from this, is that as Luke goes down to face his darkest fears in this evil cave of Dagobah, it's almost like he's aware now that the enemy was not the Empire, not Darth Vader, but he himself, his face is inside the helmet, and he's aware the greatest enemy in my world could be me. And I want to say to you today that the greatest enemies in your life, the things you've got to fight to win in life, is not your circumstance, not what you're going through, not the people that have done you wrong. The greatest overcoming moments in your life are going to be when you wrestle the demons on the inside of you, when you wrestle with who you are and where you came from and what you're called to do and what work God is trying to do on the inside of your life. Our boys used to love playing with lightsabers. In fact, sometimes like on the way to church, we'd realize our boys are getting in the car when they're little, and they would have little plastic lightsaber swords. And how many of your boys or kids had lightsabers? Anybody have them? Yeah, and so they'd get in the car with those. They'd have a cape on, sometimes no shirt, athletic shorts, and rain boots. And that was their costume. And they would just be like, and they would just play Star Wars. But in those moments, sometimes eventually, somebody would get hit, in a wrong way. And so it'd be Nolan. But, well, yeah, who? And then we'd be like, Austin, you need to apologize to Nolan. And Austin would be like, no, he hit me first. And we made, Star Wars rules, and he broke those and used the Force and hit me or whatever. We're like, yeah, you're going to say you're sorry to your brother. So he'd be like, sorry. And I'd be like, no, I want you to look at him. So he'd be like, I'm sorry. I'd be like, no, look him in the eyes. Any parents experience any of this ever? I'm sorry. Okay, I want you to try it again and say it like you mean it, like you're actually sorry. I'm sorry. And then Lisa would jump in and go, I'm going to make you guys hug and say 3 things that you like about each other. And this whole thing, because we were trying to get our children to not just say the words, but to mean it from the inside, right? That's what all good parents would do. And this is the wrestling match. I'm going to turn off my, this is going to make me hungry for sushi, so I'm going to just turn that off. This is what all good parents do, is they try to get their kids. Some of us had children who were standing up on the outside, but sitting down on the inside, right? And our goal is to try to get our kids' lives to line up so that they obey, not from us telling them what to do, but because it's the right thing to do. And listen, I would just put this in front of you today, that you and me are like children with God sometimes. Like we go, God, I'm going to do the right things, but on the inside, you're not really doing it. You don't really mean it. There's some problems in there. And I think that's where the battle for us is. Here's a couple things in the Bible that the Bible teaches. And Jesus was pretty hardcore. And yes, he was loving and loved sinners, and he gave people second chances, but he was also pretty right to the point and pretty direct. And he at times would just call us out in our humanity for the way that we would try to polish the outside and look good for the party, but we knew on the inside things weren't well. And here's what he says. If we can put that on the screen for me to read, the scripture, there it is. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Wow. And man, just like our kids and just like us, like Jesus can see through you and me. And he's like, man, you might know all the lyrics to the 4 songs we sang today, and you might be able to recite them, but that has no bearing on the fact of whether you actually worship God from your heart or not. Because it's not what we do on the outside that matters to God. He sees way deeper than that. And he goes, hey, you could say all the right things. I want your heart. I want the inside. I want you to wrestle with the things that are really battling inside of you. And then one other scripture that's really hopeful. This is in Hebrews chapter 10, but it's quoting a man named Jeremiah, who was a prophet to the nation of Israel. And this is the promise that God sent for hundreds and thousands of years before Jesus came. And he said these words, this is the new covenant I will make with my people on that day, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their hearts and I'll write them on their minds. Listen, this is hopeful because all of us kind of come to religion or faith or whatever with this kind of thing like, I got to clean it up, got to put a smile on, put on my cleanest Star Wars t-shirt and get to church and act like everything's okay. But really the reality is that God's not impressed with any of that. He's saying, look, you can get the outside fixed all you want, but I want to put my laws, my thoughts, my heart inside your heart. I want to get it to where it matters. Listen, if you can get your child to have an obedient heart, you'll have a lot less time disciplining his disobedient actions, because where the heart goes, the actions follow. Man, let me tell you what, as a pastor, things I've experienced where people talk about where their problems come from. And some people think their problems are their spouse. Do not elbow anybody that you're sitting next to in here. Some people think it's their family of origin, or they think it's their boss, or they were bullied in high school, or somebody did them wrong. And we can tend to put the blame and go, the problems in my life are because of so-and-so. And that's a pretty easy thing for people to do. And then some people go, man, the problems in my life are from circumstances. I didn't want to get sick. I didn't want to have to go through that. I didn't want my job to fire me, but that's where my problems come from. You want to know why I'm angry? Because of the circumstances in life. And then sometimes people would blame the empire. And what I mean by that is society at large. And people who are really into science and really into naturalism and materialism and don't believe that God exists, there's nothing spiritual in the world, they would say the reason that we have the problems we have is because society has imposed these rules upon us, but we need to come back to where we can reject all the voices and we're in charge. But they would say circumstances of the empire or the society are the problems. Some people even blame God. They say, man, I'll tell you what, lived my whole life, did my own thing, didn't really harm anybody. That's a lie. And I didn't do anything wrong. And then the one time I asked God for something, he didn't come through for me. And people blame God, and they live their whole life without God, but in their moment of need, they go, God, I need this. And if things didn't happen the way that they thought, they go, see, it didn't work. And people blame a lot of different stuff for their problems. But, you know, it takes a real man or a real woman to stand up and go, I can be brave and vulnerable enough to go, my problems are because of me. Like, the problem is me. Yeah, I might have had a rough childhood. I might have had a boss that didn't treat me right. I've been bullied my whole life. I've been made fun of, but the issues inside of me are my issues, and I got to deal with those. And that's, I would say, where our problems come from. Where does morality come from? This sense as human beings that we go, I'll use the word ought. We ought to do this. We should do these things. Where does that come from? I read a great book by Dinesh D'Souza called What's So Great About Christianity. It's a great apologetic book, and just read it this last week. And he talks about the two sources of where morality comes from. And he said essentially there's two different kinds. There's traditional morality in the world, and then there's secular morality. And the idea is that traditional morality usually comes from an outside source. In the case of Christianity, it would be God, and it would be from the scriptures. So the 10 Commandments, the Sermon on the Mount, the entire Bible would be the source from an outside source that would teach us this is what you do. And in our moments of dilemma, we would go, I don't know what to do because I feel this way, but the outside source is saying this is not okay, this is okay, and we trust that. The other kind of morality that's in the world is secular morality, which rejects the idea of God, and it comes from a long line of philosophies and different things like that I won't go into here, but essentially it means this. I must reject everything that society is trying to tell me to do so that I can get down to the nitty-gritty of what's really in my heart and that I can do what I think is right. And so I'm going to reject my parents' voices, my upbringing in education, religion, anything from the outside. I'm going to reject that. And what happens in that moment is we put ourselves in the victory seat in our hearts and go, no one's going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I feel I should do. This whole philosophy and idea is captured in Shakespeare's Hamlet, where one character says to another, to thine own self be true. It's the essence and the most, the opus magnum statement of a secular type of morality. The problem with this kind of morality, in my opinion, in my worldview, would be this. Number one, that the person who's sitting on the throne of your heart, if you are making the rules and you call the shots, the problem with that is that it's an assumption that we're good and we're infallible. Now here's the thing. I got neighbors who are not Christians, and they're some good people and they do some good things, but the reality is whether you're a Christian or not, we're a mixed bag at best. We do some good things and we do some bad things. We're kind of like Han Solo. Okay? Like, I think I got a picture of him. Sometimes he's the hero. Sometimes he's a half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder who you calling scruffy-looking. But the point is that we're kind of like that. We're kind of this mixed bag. It's like this kid that goes to class in third grade and first day of school, and the teacher says, hey, we're going to go around the room. We're going to ask some questions. And so she comes to little Johnny. She goes, Johnny, what does your dad do for work? And little Johnny goes, my dad's a magician. And she goes, oh, I've never had one of those in my class. That's wonderful. What's his favorite trick? He saws people in half. And she's like, oh my goodness, so dramatic. That's wonderful. And she goes, okay, the next question, Johnny, do you have any family members? He says, yes, I have a half brother and 2 half sisters. And so, come on, that's a good joke. You can, right there. The reality is that we're kind of sawn in half a little bit in our lives. We're somewhat good and somewhat. I don't want to trust myself to make the decisions because I actually have learned enough about God and who Jesus is and what the scriptures say to have a trust in his morality and what he says, that even if I don't feel it, I'm going to go with what he says. And it's worked for me. Our inability to see our biggest problem is often our biggest problem. This is the thing. You may think the problems that you're facing in life are external. I'm saying those might not be. If you think the problems in your life are because of other people, you're like the guy that walks into the party with a big piece of spinach on your tooth and you're like smiling, talking about, ha, ha, ha. But and you're the only, everybody knows what your problem is, but you don't know. Wow. And our inability to see our biggest problem is often the biggest problem in our life. Wow. Let me talk about my personal fight with the empire of self in my life. I believe this, that in the reality of my life, it's a constant battle for who gets to sit in the number one seat. So like imagine the Olympics and you got third place, second place, and you got first place a little higher. Who gets to sit on the first place seat inside my life? And listen, I've been a Jesus follower for most of my life, but I'm not always, you can be a believer in Jesus and not let him sit on the number one chair. You can always put him at second and go, well, I'm going to make the call on this one because I got feelings for this or whatever. And man, I'm telling you that's the epic battle, is trying to wrestle what's going on the inside. And for me, this was the case. And I remember being in Bible college in the early 90s and being frustrated with my own humanity, learning about how good God is, but just the comparison to where I was at was actually discouraging. And I remember that one day I went out on the side of the hill. I wasn't suicidal, but there was this big cliff, and I'm just like, God, I'm so angry with you and with me. Like, why is this not working? And I remember going through cycles in my life that seemed to just be like circular. I couldn't get out of. Like, it looked like this. I would sin, and I'd feel bad about it, so I would repent and say a prayer. And then I would commit to trying harder. Be like, I'm going to actually do better. Yeah. Go a few longer days of not sinning. But eventually, because I'm half good and half bad, I would sin again. And then I would say, I'm sorry. And then I would go, I need to try harder. I'm gonna go to more church, gonna read more Bible, and I would just kept trying harder. And it kept being a cycle, and I got to a spot where I was so frustrated. I don't know if you can relate to this, but this has been very real to me in my life. And what happened is, I remember just like on the verge of tears and feeling like, God, and this is where I've noticed from that moment forward in my life, this is where people walk away from their faith. Because they go, God, if you can't change me in a magic moment, if I say that prayer and things don't change and you don't magically change things, then it doesn't work. But that's not how the universe is. That's not how God is. God wants to partner with you, but it's your heart. Come on. And he's going, man, I just want to sit on that seat long enough till I can coach you into letting me stay on that number one seat. And so I remember going back to my dorm, and I'm upset, and one of the college guys could tell I was upset, and he goes, Matt, what's going on? I kind of explained it to him, and he goes, well, you know, the Bible teaches that you are positionally righteous in Jesus. And I go, well, what does that mean? He goes, well, when God looks down, because Jesus' blood, what he did on the cross, it's actually over you, and you're in Jesus. And so when God looks at you, he doesn't see your messes up. He sees Jesus' perfection, and so you're okay. And I remember thinking this thought that's really twisted. Just so you know, this part's right that the guy was telling me, and I remember saying to him, I don't want to be positionally righteous. I want to be personally righteous. Like I want to clean it up and get my act together. That has been my problem most of my life, is not letting Jesus call the shots and going, I would rather just try harder and fight it out on my own. Whew. Hard lesson to learn. The philosopher Plato, of the famous Cuban duet, Aristotle and Plato, said that the problem of evil in our world is due to a lack of knowledge, and if people know what to do, they'll do it. And so then the emphasis on spreading knowledge in the world became a philosophy. But then Paul comes along, who's a follower of Jesus, who did everything right in his life. He tried the hardest of anybody, and he was like almost like Jesus, like he did everything right in his religion. And he comes to a spot, and Paul knew about these philosophies, and Paul writes this in the Bible, and he says, I know this about me. The good I want to do, I don't do. The evil I don't want to do, I do. And then he says it's not a problem of knowledge, it's a problem of the will on the inside of me. And at the end of that discourse, he writes, who can save me from this ugly cycle? He says, praise be to God that he sent Jesus to come and sit inside of me and get it right, because I couldn't do it on my own. That's the hope for you. That's the hope for me, is in that. There's an external battle and there's an internal battle in our life. Like if you come to a place of faith in Jesus, and like, I just loved watching our baptisms today. Isn't that awesome? We got a couple more tonight. And just since you guys come to the 11 o'clock service, you might not know this. We had 12 or 13 people last weekend pray and say, I want to start following Jesus in my life for the first time, which is huge. So awesome. And like God is changing hearts right here in this little church at New Vintage. But let me just say this. When you come to a place of faith, you might go, man, what do I do? And somebody might go, well, you need to keep going to church. So you do that. You might go, well, what do I do now? Well, you should get baptized. Okay, I do that. And then you come to a spot, well, what do I do now? Well, you should sing the songs and really mean it from your heart. So you sing like this. And then, you're like, okay, what do I do now? You should read the Bible. Eventually, you're going to come to a spot in your life where doing all the right things, you're still going to hit the battle where you're going to have to be like Luke Skywalker. Dive down in a place of prayer into the place where the evil in your own heart lurks and go, Jesus, this is the most vulnerable I've been. I need your help where it's not working in here. And you've got to fight the external and the internal battle. Here's what Jesus taught about it that has given me some hope, and I hope will give you some hope as well. Jesus gathers a crowd together, and he called them to come and hear. And you got to understand that the crowd that Jesus is talking to are mostly Jews, and they grew up with the Jewish religion, which had hundreds of rules. Things like you can't eat this food, but you can't eat this one, but you can't have this one. You can have this one, but you can't mix it with this. And you can have these ones, but you can't have it past Friday night at a certain time. And everything was laid out. You got to wash your hands with a certain way. And if you do make a mistake, you have to go back into the church and have a priest do it a certain way. It was a lot of outside external rules, and Jesus addresses that. He says, listen, try to understand. And I can imagine Jesus being a little frustrated, like, humanity, try to understand this. It's not what goes in your mouth that defiles you. You're defiled by the words that come out of your mouth. Wow. And for all of us who have had to work on cussing habits in our life, we go, oh, like, okay. But and the disciples ask him some questions about it, and I deleted that out just to get to this point. Jesus jumps back into the context, and the conversation says, the words you speak, they come from the heart. That's what defiles you. Can I just say this? If you have a problem cussing, if you have a problem with just rage or gossip, those are external problems, but the real problem is in your heart. Yeah. And Jesus says, for from the heart comes evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, lying, slander. These are what defile you. Eating with unwashed hands never defiles you. Now, Jesus wasn't giving people an excuse to not wash their hands after using the restroom or not to do the outside things, but he was saying this. When it comes to really doing the hard work of the heart work, start with the heart. Yes. So that's something we can all remember. Start with the heart. That's what Jesus taught. Yeah. If you can do that, things will go better for you. The second thing Jesus teaches is what I like to call this, it's a universal thing called don't Febreze your gym socks, okay? But here's how Jesus says it. It's true, you're gonna see. Here's the other thing that Jesus teaches about this. And Jesus is really good at drawing a crowd. He starts with the word hypocrites. Hey, everybody, hypocrites. Thanks for coming to New Vintage. Hypocrites, I can see all your nasty hearts. I don't think Jesus was like that, but nonetheless. Okay, for you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're filthy, wow, full of greed, self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees, first wash the inside of the cup and the dish. Then the outside will become clean too. And this is what's great. Jesus says, start with the heart. And then he kind of brings that a little fuller in this verse. And he says, look, you can work on all those outside things. You should go to church. You should get baptized. You should give money to the church and to the poor. You should read your Bibles. But really, if you would clean the inside of you first, the outside cleans up automatically. Wow. And it's a powerful, powerful thing. Now, I've been going on walks because I like walks. That's my favorite little song right there. But when it's bad weather, I go into the gym, and I even have the Planet Fitness bag because I kind of just dive all in on stuff, like I signed up and I'm like, oh, give me the bag, yes. Is there a water bottle? Do you have the T-shirt? Oh, you have this one. Can I get it in black too? And they did. They gave it to me. So anyway, this is my actual gym bag. And the other day I was going to go for a workout, but I didn't have any socks clean. It was laundry day and I didn't have any clean socks. And I was like, I know I always keep an extra pair of shoes and shirt in my bag. I was like, I wonder if I have any clean socks in there. And so I go to my bag and I'm kind of smart. I carry like a little travel deodorant and stuff like that, but I have my socks. But these are actual workout socks that I have in here. And I keep them in a plastic bag because it gets so sweaty and stinky. I don't want it to get on the rest of my clothes. I'm smart that way. So I'm going to open this, which is dangerous. But these were what I found. And they're actually moist. This is not a lie. Can you just stand up here and hold this for me? So I found these in my bag, and I don't know how long they'd been in there, but the baggie kept them moist. And so they were nice and cool when I put them on my feet, but it was kind of nasty. But I just thought, I took them into the bathroom, and I got some Febreze, and I just thought, oh my God, we're good. Put these suckers on. Put them in the drawer, And the thing is, it's actually really kind of gross to think about that. But some of us on Saturday night, we don't know what to do because we know we're supposed to go to church on Sunday morning. And so we're like, we better spray a little Febreze on my soul. Like, I gotta clean it up. Gotta eat some carbs. I gotta figure out, I gotta get ready. And you know what we're doing? We're putting Febreze on our dirty socks. And it's just not gonna work. And you can't do that. And Jesus goes, clean the thing. Don't Febreze the thing. Just put it in the wash. Let Jesus get inside your heart and work on you a little bit. Our inability to see our biggest problem is often our biggest problem. Start in the heart, wash the socks, win on the inside, then you'll win on the outside. I want to go back to that verse that's such good news that God promised. He said, this is the new covenant I'll make with my people on that day. I'm going to put my laws in their hearts and write them on their minds. Man, that's what I need. I need God to not just clean me up on the outside. I need God to fix my biggest problem. Man, the other day, just one other illustration is Lisa was cleaning out our pantry, and it seems like this has happened before, but we're cleaning out our pantry. Lisa finds a thing of soup, a can of soup, and I like soup. And she goes, it's 2012. It expired in 2012, which means it was like made in like 2005 because soup will last forever. The weirdest thing is, man, it looked brand new because it had been tucked in the pantry and the label wasn't dusty or dirty, like it looked good on the outside. Listen, some people going to church, you'll look good on the inside, but you know that your stuff's expired and spoiled on the inside, and you got to let Jesus into the inside of you. Man, you need a clean heart more than you need a clean shirt for Sunday. There's a king named David who just nailed this in life. Like, King David was the king of Israel that every other king aspired to be to. In fact, they even said Jesus, when he comes, he's going to be a king like David. And they said we're going to call him the son of David because he's going to reinstitute these great years of Israel's history. And King David, even though religion was the thing of his day and was all external, he got it to a place of being internal. And here's what he writes, and he so gets it. He says, how can a young person stay pure? By obeying your word, which is external, doing the things that God says. I've tried hard to find you. Don't let me wander from your commands. I love the personal touch of David's heart towards God. He says, I've hidden your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. He obeyed it on the outside because he had hidden it on the inside of him. And listen, you can't do one without the other. Like, you got to start with the heart. I'm going to give you 3 things in 3 minutes. You ready? How you can live this out. I'm mostly saying that so I can take a breath. Could you just say, sure, that sounds awesome, Pastor Matt. You know what I mean? Okay. 3 things. Don't put these, they're on the screen. Leave it on the screen then. Do it. No, go back. Eat some sushi is number 1. I'm going to give you 1 minute on this. If you want to change your life, eat some sushi. It's good, huh? Some of you are like, oh, that sounds great. Some of you, how many are like, I don't ever, that sounds nasty. Anybody right, raw fish? The smell, I get it. I actually took a picture the first time because I love sushi, and Abby wanted to go get sushi with Dad, so I want to show you this picture of the first time she had sushi. Yeah, it didn't go really good with her. She didn't like it. But the great thing is that she tried something new. The point that I'm trying to make to you is this. I'm not saying go have sushi for lunch so you can go to heaven. What I'm saying is some of you never tried sushi and you don't know what you're missing. It could change your life. Try something new. Some of you go, man, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. I don't really read my Bible. That's not what I do. The world came up with this idea. If you do the same things and expect different results, we call that insanity. Man, you ought to try something new in your spiritual life. You ought to go to church twice in a row. You ought to try getting better. You ought to read the Bible a little bit. Try something new. Eat some sushi. Number 2, become 5 again. Some of you should become a kid again and just annoy the heck out of people, right? Like a 5-year-old, I've hung out, a 5-year-old would come along and, Uncle Matt, even if I'm not their uncle, I don't know, just I'm making this up, but Uncle Matt, can we go outside? Sure, we'll go outside. How come the sky's blue? It's daytime. Yeah, but why is it blue? Well, I don't know. Well, how come? Well, I do know it's science. It's we have an atmosphere, and I think there's cumulus things, and the sun rays, polysynthesis, and how come? And I'm like, because it would be black in outer space. But how come? And eventually I'm just stop, because God made it that blue, But here's the great thing. You need to become 5 again and ask yourself, how come? I sat down with a guy a long time ago. And I said, man, what's going on in your life? You seem upset. He goes, yeah, my life's a wreck. I go, what's going on? He pulls up a picture on his phone, shows me his nightstand filled with vodka bottles, empty. And he goes, this is just this week. I go, man, that's not really very good for you. Like, that could kill you. It would kill me. You know, and he goes, yeah, I guess I just like to drink. I said, how come? Because I don't know, because I can't sleep without it. How come? He starts to go, because I'm angry. How come? And then he starts to unravel this story about his life and what happened with the things. And now he's just dumping it out. And you and I can't get into the cave of Dagobah unless we become 5 again and start asking, how come? Why am I like this? Why do I struggle with this? What's really going on here? And I'll tell you what, you can't even figure that out on your own. You got to get on your knees and get in prayer and go, man, Jesus, what is going on in me and why? How come I'm like this? And you know what's great is Jesus is really good in that environment. Third thing that you got to do is do a 1,000-piece puzzle. Just go to Walmart and buy that. These are great. Isn't this great advice? Some of you are gonna post this on Instagram. People are like, that church is weird. Eat sushi, become 5 again, and do a 1,000-piece puzzle. Here's the deal. Last Thanksgiving, I did a puzzle because we had some time, a little holiday time, and then I did one at Christmas, and I brought it. I want to show you my Christmas puzzle. This is an actual thing, and I glued it together because I'm pretty proud of it. Okay, I know. Some of you never finished yours, but I did mine. I'm righteous on the outside. Learned a couple things about doing a puzzle. And by the way, you may not touch this either. Seriously. You learn a couple things when you do a puzzle. Number one, puzzles aren't fun to do alone. However, if you're gonna help me with my puzzle, I want you to do it my way. Like, I got rules, but I don't want to do it alone. But don't do it your way, do it my way. My family knows. We've gone to therapy about this. But this is what I've learned about puzzles. Number two is that it takes a long time. Like, that took me over the course of a week and a half, working on it, tinkering with it, putting pieces. Third thing is this, you got to trust the process. You got to hope all the pieces are there in the box, because sometimes it's frustrating. You go, I'm never going to find that one piece. And here's the thing I want to say to you tonight, or today, is this. The reason I want you to go buy a puzzle and put it together is because it'll take you some time, and you'll have to be patient, and you got to realize that God's looking at your story, your life, like a puzzle. He's not looking at it like he's going to come and instantly fix you with one prayer. Not from Pastor Lisa, not from me, not from our elders. You need to know that God is piecing your life together, the puzzle pieces one at a time, and he's patient. And you might not like how you are, how dirty and messed up, how past due you are on the inside of your life, but God's really gentle and really patient. He goes, just let me sit in the chair, and I'm gonna do this puzzle. It's gonna take some time, but I'm telling a great story, and it's gonna look amazing at the end. And we gotta let Jesus sit in the seat of being number one in our life, because he's trying to tell a story through your life, and he's putting pieces together. And you go, I wanna work on this part. He goes, nah, I'm putting this together. You need this first. I'm telling you, you gotta trust the process. I wanna pray with you today. I wanna pray with you. Jesus, I just really, on a really personal note, want to thank you for who you are in my life, and that you haven't been just external with me. You've worked your way in, and I'm grateful. I don't ever want to be addicted to rules and religion. I want to know you, and I want your ways to be written inside my heart so I can follow you. And God, I want all that you are. I want all of it. And I don't want to miss out and look good on the outside, but not be okay on the inside. So that's my prayer for me. I'm praying that same prayer for every single person here. God, I don't care how they look today, or how long it's been since they did one good thing or whatever. I'm praying that you would cause people to trust you enough to open up their hearts to you and deal with the biggest enemy in their life, themselves. And let you in that space to do the hard heart work.